The Snow Queen by Hans Christian Andersen. Once upon a time there was a wicked, mischievous hobgoblin. One day he was in a very good humor because he had made a mirror with the power of causing all that was good and beautiful, when it was reflected therein, to look poor and mean, while that which was good for nothing and ugly stood out and looked worse than ever. In this mirror the most beautiful landscapes looked like boiled spinach, and the best persons were turned into frights or appeared to stand on their heads. "That's glorious fun," said the hobgoblin. All the little hobgoblins told each other that now only would it be possible to see how the world really looked. They ran about with the mirror, and at last there was not a land or a person who was not represented there, twisted all out of shape. So then they thought they would fly up to the sky and have a joke there. The higher they flew with the mirror, the more terribly it grinned. They could hardly hold it fast. Suddenly the mirror shook so terribly with grinning that it flew out of their hands and fell to the earth, where it was dashed in 100,000,000 pieces. And now it worked much more evil than before, for some of those pieces were hardly so large as a grain of sand, and they flew about in the wide world, and when they got into people's eyes, there they stayed. And then people saw everything perverted, and only had an eye for that which was evil. Some persons even got a splinter in their heart, and then their heart became a lump of ice. Then the wicked hobgoblin laughed till he almost choked, for all this tickled his fancy. The fine splinters still flew about in the air, and now we shall hear what happened. In a large town, where there are so many houses and so many people that there is no room left for everybody to have a garden, there lived two little children. They were not brother and sister, but they loved each other just as much as if they were. Their parents lived opposite each other in two attic rooms. The roof of one house just touched the roof of the other, with only a rainwater gutter between them. They each had a little dormer window, so one had only to step over the gutter to get from one window to the other. Out on the leads the parents had placed two wooden boxes, in which grew pea vines, vegetables, and some little rose trees. In summer, the children were allowed to take their little stools and sit out on the roof among the roses, where they could play delightfully. In winter, there was an end of this pleasure. The windows were often frozen over, but then they heated copper pennies on the stove and laid the hot pennies on the window pane. Thus they made capital peepholes through which to look out at each other. The boy's name was Kay, the girl's was Gerda. In summer, with one jump, they could get to each other, but in winter they were obliged first to go down the long stairs, then up the long stairs again, and out of doors there was quite a snowstorm. "It is the white bees that are swarming," said Kay's old grandmother. "Do the white bees choose a queen?" asked the little boy, for he knew that the honey bees always have one. "Yes," said the grandmother. "She flies where the swarm hangs in the thickest clusters. She is the largest of all, and she never stays quietly on the earth, but flies up again into the black clouds. Many a winter's night she flits through the streets of the town and peeps in at the windows, and then they freeze in wonderful patterns that look like flowers." "Yes, I have seen it," said both the children. In the evening, when little Kay was home and half undressed, he climbed up on the chair by the window and peeped out of the little hole. A few snowflakes were falling, and one, the largest of all, remained laying on the edge of the flower pot. The flake of snow grew larger and larger, and at last it was like a beautiful maiden, dressed in the finest white gauze, made of 1,000,000 little flakes like stars. She was so lovely and delicate, but she was of ice, of dazzling, sparkling ice. Her eyes glittered like two stars, but there was neither rest nor peace in them. She nodded toward the window and beckoned with her hand. The little boy was frightened and jumped down from the chair. Then he fancied that a great white bird flew away.